Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new expanded deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at a blast from the past, all the way from 2016. I believe so. We have the Xerneas here, released in 2015, was a deck in 2016, with the Rainbow Force. Does 10 plus 30 for each different type of Pokemon on your bench. In 2016, this was great with the dual type Pokemon released in the Steam Siege set, allowing you to have multiple of them in play and deal massive damage. However, the card is not as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty usable thanks to some expanded introductions that help the card stay a little bit relevant despite the fairy type's absence from the current game. We're going to talk about this list. This list is not entirely mine. I did take it from the ladder. However, I've adapted about 8 or 9 cards from perfectly, switching things around to how I like. So I'll talk about those adaptations and what I replaced, some other choices, etc. when I get to them. Starting off, we do have 4 copies of this Xerneas. After all, going after this Rainbow Force, 10 plus 30 for each different type of Pokemon on your bench. You do max at 9 different types of Pokemon on your bench, meaning you do 280 damage. So it is a good number for hitting V-stars, notably does not hit V-maxes. We'll talk about that in a minute. So awesome art here by Mitsuhiro Aita. 120 HP is very nice for a basic, so not bad there. 2 Retreat can sometimes be a little painful, though that has come up, so buyer beware there. We have 1 copy of Cobalion and 1 copy of Tsareena, and I'm just going to skip a few cards, rather to the exact end of the list, because I want to talk about why they're in here. We play 1 copy of Counter Energy here, where if you're behind on prizes, it counts as 2 of any energy. If attached to a Pokemon that is in a GX or an EX, Tsareena, despite being a V, the way that the Counter Energy is worded, causes it to work just fine. So it can be attached to Tsareena, provide 2 of any energy, or attached to Cobalion and provide 2 of any energy. And since we play this, it also acts as a 5th double colorless energy of sorts, allowing us to have another touch of resilience, but also gives us some options since we're going to need Pokemon in play anyway. Cobalion has the Revenge Blast attack. We're not going to worry about Quick Guard. Does 30 plus 30 for each prize card your opponent has taken. So if your opponent has taken 5 prize cards, you can do 180 damage with this, hitting for weakness on some Pokemon you see very commonly on the expanded ladder, such as Ice Ride to Calyrex. Seems to be very popular. Kyurem VMAX is a newcomer that's seeing a lot of powerful play. So yeah, just being able to hit weakness on them, never bad. There's also still some fairy type tag teams you see every now and then still lingering on the ladder. And you know, psychic type adaptations of those, such as Alcremie VMAX, which I saw the other day. Not too common, but you do see it. Sylveon VMAX saw the other day. Yeah, it might be relevant. This card's awesome. I do love Cobalion. The card I replaced for this is that this was originally an Aegislash-EX. I will go over Aegislash-EX real quick as well. The original list played this Aegislash-EX, which prevents all damage done to it by Pokemon that has special energy, and its attack does 40 plus 20 for each metal energy. You unfortunately can't use counter on it, and you can't boost its damage, so it's only doing 40. But what it was just here for is that something your opponent can't like deal with sometimes. You can just like try to win a matchup. But it's just very unreliable in my opinion, so I'd rather have something that's useful. One of the metal types that you could swatch this out for if you do want some more consistency, not worry about the attacking, is Jirachi EX from Plasma Blast, which has stellar guidance. When you play this Pokemon from your hand on your bench, you may search your deck for a supporter card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. We do already have Tapu Lele in this list, but if you want to play both and have the option to play a second one to get a supporter and not, you know, and still get that type diversity for your bench, then you could play Jirachi EX as well. I'm playing Cobalion, I'm testing it out. Maybe Cobalion doesn't work and I want to switch it for Jirachi, but it's I quite like this Cobalion. It's one of my favorite cards. 1 copy of Tsareena V from Fusion Strike. Another Pokemon that can use Counter Energy to attack, does 20, and you may discard any of your bench Pokemon, does 40 more for each discarded in this way. Now, obviously, like I said, we cannot hit more than, 280, or, yeah, 280 on normal circumstances, and we can get up to 310 with Xerneas usually. However, Tsareena allows us to bridge that gap, taking 1 big final KO. If we discard all 8 benched Pokemon, we're going to be doing 340 damage, allowing us to KO just about everything in the expanded format. In an inclusion here that we have also talked about later on online, that will do 370, meaning we do KO almost literally everything in the expanded format besides some rare exceptions like Colossal VMAX, which we would hit for weakness and KO regardless. So Tsareena's pretty good. Counter Energy is a bit difficult to use, so do keep in mind you're not going to get consistent game-to-game use out of Tsareena or Cobalion. So if you just, like I said, if you want to cut Cobalion for a Jirachi, go ahead. There's not really any grass Pokemon that provide consistency in the same way Tsareena does, though I guess there is that Kricketune V. So if you just really want to go full consistency, it's not good, but there is Kricketune V. We'll just talk about that real quick, I suppose. Setting stage, once you're in your turn, you may draw through until you have 3 cards in your hand. If this Pokemon's active, draw until you have 4 instead. So if you really want to go full consistency, yeah, why not throw a Kricketune V in there? And then you can cut the Counter Energy and probably just cut the Cobalion at that point. Tsareena more important than Cobalion, but Cobalion has come up in some niche scenarios, so this is just my personal picks for now. Like I said, if you want to go full consistency, Kricketune V, Jirachi, EX in their place. 2 copies of Dedenne-GX with the Day-Day change. Once during your turn, when you play it from your hand to your bench, you may discard it and then draw 6 cards. Because Counter Energy disclosed Dedenne, we cannot use any of the attacks. 160 HP on the 2 prizes is absolutely terrible, but we need the draw of Day-Day change. That's why we play 2 copies, because you're always going to need to play one usually in a game. 1 copy of Crobat V. This is our Dark type Pokemon with the Dark asset. When you play it from your hand to your bench, you draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. You can't use more than 1 Dark asset ability each turn. The attack is actually usable with the Counter Energy, so do keep that in mind. If you're hitting for weakness, this can hit for 150 after Poison, which isn't too terrible, could potentially make the difference. So do keep in mind you have that as an option. 180 HP is not too bad. I do love this Gosan artwork. Very nice there. And obviously, like you can see, that we're just filling out all these type requirements. We'll use a consistency Pokemon to boost our Xerneas' damage. 1 copy of Tapu Lele is our Psychic type. Deep Wonder Tag ability allows you to search your deck for a supporter and put it into your hand when you put Tapu Lele onto the bench. Energy Drive is actually quite a usable attack in this deck. You can't use Counter Energy with it, but you can use both Fairy and Double Colorless to pay for the Energy Drive, and I have taken a game-winning KO with Energy Drive in this deck. So it's quite good. Does 20 times the amount of energy attached to both active, isn't affected by weakness or resistance. So sadly, you're not hitting weakness with it, which would obviously be preferred, but it is quite good at just kind of getting a good hit on your opponent. If your opponent's stacking energy, something like, I don't know the best example, maybe a Blissey V would stack energy on it. You can get a game-winning KO if they just put a ton of energy on the Blissey and aren't expecting the energy drive. We have 1 copy of Oranguru here with the Primate Wisdom ability. Once during your turn, you may switch a card from your hand with the top card of your deck. There is some better colorless Pokemon that you can use for consistency in this deck, so I'm just trying to think. Not Shaman. It's not Shaman EX, but there is a colorless Pokemon that provides a lot of consistency that I just can't think of, and I don't know if it's worth looking into, considering how vast colorless Pokemon are. If we can get to it, maybe. I don't know, I want to spend all day here, but I know there's a colorless consistency Pokemon that I am forgetting about right now that I did consider using. Well, it wasn't consistency, but it's just generally helpful. If we can find it. There's also the triple draw, but that's terrible. Shaman, Rip Band. Yes, Dragonite. Dragonite, that's the one I was forgetting about. Oh, oops. Okay, there. Pull Up is the ability. When you play it from your hand to your bench, you may put 2 basic Pokemon except for Dragonite EX from your Scapel into your hand. So if you want to play this instead of the Oranguru, that is a possibility. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to get back your Xerneas, and if your Sky Field gets bumped, you're going to discard Pokemon from your bench, such as your Vs and GXs. And due to the fact it only limits EXs with the text, as you can see, except for Dragonite EX, so it actually gets anything except for Dragonite EX, you can actually get back Dedenne and Crobat and use them again. So that is definitely a consideration to make. If you just want to go full bore consistency, why not? If you do go down that route, I would probably play Scoop Up Net in this deck and then play Jirachi over Cobalion. That way you can get that benefit of Scoop Up Net fully and possibly reuse the Dragonite ability one more time. Oranguru is pretty good for another card though, so I will talk about that when we get there. 1 copy of Regidrago. Actually, I will say, I have one with 3 energy WAP down for 70. It's not a completely useless stack in this deck, so do keep that in mind, though it is pretty bad. Regidrago here. This is an addition I made to the deck with the Dragon's Horde. If it's in the active spot, you may draw cards until you have 4 in your hand. You can't use more than 1 Dragon's Horde ability each turn. Originally, this deck didn't have a Dragon type, and I just didn't really sit well with that. I want to be able to have a Dragon type because you know, you get an extra type of, you know, get an extra bonus. And obviously you can't have all 10 types on your bench at a single time, But Dragon types being pretty strong, you know, if you have to discard another Pokemon and you're unable to get it back, you can notice we don't play a lot of Pokemon Recovery. That's why Dragonite's also a consideration there. Regidrago is a good Dragon to have. So you get an extra type when your bench gets bumped, you know. This deck is kind of going to blitz through its opponent or lose entirely. It doesn't have a lot of Pokemon Recovery, it doesn't have a lot of backup plan. That's why, like I said, Dragonite EX, consideration to make if you want to do that. We have one copy of Radiant Hawlucha here. Here's how we hit the VMAXs for 310. As long as this Pokemon's on your bench, your attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active VMAX. Notably does with the 320 number. I don't think we can do anything about that personally, though. You could play like a Fighting Fury Belt, Muscle Band, Choice Belt, rather, to hit that number. But this deck really needs the consistency, and it needs to just be able to hit. You know, it's going to beat the matchups it can beat, and then it's going to lose to the matchups it's going to lose to. I don't think you're going to beat Shadow Rider Colorless anyway, because they're going to be locking your abilities constantly. And if they're locking your Radiant Hawlucha with Silent Lab, you're not going to be getting the 1-hit KO anyway. So you either just Blitzkrieg them super early on, turn 1 KO, turn 2 KO, turn 3 KO, or you probably lose the game. So Radiant Hawlucha is for other VMAXs, allows you to hit 310, which does get things like for Mew VMAX, for instance, as well as a few others that don't come to mind at this current moment. That's what I'm playing. Originally, the deck played a Sudowoodo from Guardians Rising. A lot of decks with Sky Field will play Sudowoodo. It's a very strong card for denying. We have to take off the colorless filter real quick. Very strong card for denying your opponent's bench. Your opponent can't have more than 4 bench Pokemon. If they have 5 or more, they must discard 1. And what this does is that even though you have Sky Field in play, each player can technically have 8. You use up one of your slots for this Sudowoodo here, and your opponent now cannot play any more than 4. So, yeah, it's kind of limiting in that way. Decks like Meloetta Genesect really do not like seeing this. Shadow Rider as well can struggle because they want to have like 3 or 4 Shadow Riders in play, as well as usually their Mimigar or Wobbuffets and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. That's what the deck played before I switched out for Hawlucha, but I prefer the damage buff that Hawlucha gives. One thing this deck did also play before Hawlucha is a 1-1 Alolan Muck line. I don't think it's worth playing, honestly. It's the Alolan Muck from Sun and Moon Base with the Power of Alchemy that locks basic abilities. The problem is that, honestly, you need basic abilities more than most decks. Obviously, you can see that you play out like every basic ability possible on these guys, and I even showed you alternatives where you can even play more basic abilities if you swap these 2 out. I just think, like, you know, I'd rather just have my own basic abilities. It's an evolution. There's like no search options for it that were in the deck. So I wasn't getting it out consistently, and both of the types of Alolan Grimer overlap with our Dark and Psychic types we already play, so I just didn't find it useful. If you want to put it back in the list, go ahead. Personally, if you want to run another 1-1 line that I think is a little bit better, there is type overlap as well. But we do have the Ninetales from Primal Clash with the Barrier Shrine that says each player can't play Stadium cards, so you can potentially lock your Sky Field play. Buyer beware, if your opponent Field Blowers out of play, you can't put it back into play, though you can discard Ninetales and then do that. So Ninetales is what I'd play if I was going to play a Stage 1 in the deck. Because this provides a very good utility value, even if it is decreasing your damage cap by 30. Take 2 copies of Volcanion-EX, the Steam Up ability, one of the only dual-type Pokemon you can really make use of, because it is a basic, it's fire and water. You're not going to use the attacks or the abilities, so we're not going to talk about them. Very cool card, though, obviously. If you want to use the full art or the secret reprints, those are also really nice artworks. I don't have those on BTCGO, so I use the regular. The reason we play 2 copies of this is because it's like our biggest, we're always going to have this in play, because it's a plus 60 damage on our Rainbow Force attack. Like I said, there are other dual types. We're going to just filter real quick and go to Steam Siege, which is right here. And there is the Shift Tree, which is a Stage 2, so absolutely not. There's Volcarona, which is a Stage 1, which isn't the worst. There is the Bisharp, which is actually pretty good, and it's probably the one I'd play if I was going to play one. because it has the Retaliate for 1 energy, allowing you to do 90 damage. With weakness, that's doing 180, which isn't too bad. And then, is that it? Azumarill, that's the other one. Azumarill is a water and fairy. The problems with playing these Pokemon, though, is that if you can see, fairy overlaps with our Xerneas for the basic here. Dark overlaps with our Crobat that we're already playing here. Oh yeah, there's also Galvantula. I love Galvantula, absolute GOAT card. Electric overlaps with our Dedenne on the basic there. And the Volcarona grass overlaps with our Tsareena. So they're not bad in theory, however, in practice, they're stage 1s that are difficult to search, and they overlap on their basic types with Pokemon we already have in play. We're really going for speed and nothing but speed in this deck. You just want to blow your opponent out before they even really get going. You want to turn 1, get like a big knockout. Helps you hit weakness on like ADP and stuff like that. So blow them up, have some fun. 2 copies of Juniper, discard your hand, draw 7, the most consistent draw supporter in Expanded. 2 copies of Colress. The list originally played 1. I decided that 1 was not enough. List also played 1 Juniper. I increased both of these. You want more draw supporters. For the late game, once all your draw Pokemon is used up, you want to use these guys. Shuffle your hand to deck, then draw a card for each of bench Pokemon and play both yours and your opponent's. As you're playing Sky Field, so you're going to net a lot off of Colress, especially because I'm not playing Sudowoodo anymore, so your opponent's going to a lot of times bench out all of their Pokemon. You can draw like 12 to 16 cards off Colress, which is absolutely absurd. Absolutely play 2 copies. 1 copy of N here, shuffle each player in his hand into their deck, and then draw a card for each of their prize cards. Disruption in the late game, and a little bit of draw in the early game. Potentially could run Marnie over this if that's your preference. 1 copy of Guzma here to guss up your opponent's bench Pokemon, switch one of your bench Pokemon with your opponent's active, and then switch your active with one of your bench, but also gives you a switch. As you can see, we play some heavy retreaters here like Volcanion, Regidrago, and Oranguru, as well as Tsareena and Cobalion, so we don't want those left up in the active spot. Get the hell out of dodge, essentially, if they're stuck there, so Guzma helps with that. 1 copy is pretty low, but we do play versus Seeker. Do keep in mind that Guzma 1 copy is pretty low, so if you want to increase that, find a cut for that, and go ahead. 1 copy of Raihan. You only play if one of your Pokemon was knocked out. Attach a basic energy from your spell to one of your Pokemon. If you do, search your deck for any card and put it into your hand. The Xerneas attack cost does need to be supplemented because we can't do this in 1 attachment. So you either need to use Raihan, you need to use Max Elixir, which we'll talk about in a bit, and then you need to attach for turn using double Colorless or Counter to pay the 2 Colorless energy on this attack cost. We're never using Power Creation, by the way. I didn't talk about this, but you're almost never using this attack, so it's irrelevant. 1 copy of Teammates. If one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, search your deck for up to 2 cards, put them into your hand. Potentially, if you think Raihan is just the best supporter of all time and you're going to consistently get it off, you can play 2 Raihan and 0 Teammates. Do not go 2 Teammates, 0 Raihan, because Raihan is very useful. But I personally like the 1-1 split. Yeah. You know, if you want to go 2-0, you can. Don't go 2-0 this way. Just do 2 Raihan, 0 Teammates. I like 1-1 for the options. 4 copies of Quick Ball is the best basic search and expanded. Search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it to your hand after discarding a card from your hand. So barely any cost, and you're getting a basic Pokemon on your deck. As you can see, everything's basic, so it searches everything in the deck. 3 copies of VIP Pass. The original list only played 2. I thought 3 was better. You can only use it during your first turn, search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. We're going to aim to get the turn 1 Rainbow Force off, hopefully for at least 160 damage, if not hitting more for weakness on things like ADP, Nag, Guzz, and Tina Chomp for those 1-hit KOs. We want to get that turn 1 attack, and VIP Pass really helps with that. 4 copies of Max Elixir here. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck, attach a basic energy, find there 2 basic Pokemon on your bench, and shuffle the rest back into your deck. Allows you to get an energy onto your bench Xerneas. But it's actually not too bad having these big fellas up in the active. You usually want to establish one of these guys with a Float Stone, so you can attach it there, bring it up when one of your Xerneas is KO'd, and then get that benched Max Elixir off. If you're not already ahead on attachments or don't have a Raihan or versus Seeker for Raihan in hand. 4 copies is absolutely necessary. This is why I play Oranguru over the Dragonite EX. If you want to play Dragonite EX, like I said, go ahead. It'll be pretty good, I imagine. However, Max Elixir is pretty good as well. Oranguru's Primate Wisdom allowing you to guarantee the Max Elixir on top of the deck is pretty good. 2 copies of Field Blower, choose any combination of Tool and Stadium cards in play, and discard them. We want to keep Cadix, Swell, and Silent Lab at bay because those are the things that destroy our deck. so we can keep Silent Lab out of play, keep Chaotic Swell out so we can play our Sky Fields, you know, all of the above. 2 Guppies is almost necessary. You can't allow your opponent to boost their HP either if they were to be using something like a Big Charm, a buff padding, etc. 1 copy of Comp Search here. Discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for a card, and put it into your hand. This deck is very aggressive, so having that just most aggressive ace spec is definitely worth it. Life Dew isn't really worth it. Could potentially play Scoop Up Net, get another use out of, or Scoop Up Cyclone, which gets another use out of the Crobat, Dedenne, etc. And if you're going the route with the Dragonite in it and the Jirachi in it, that may even be necessary to do so. So do keep that in mind. Just allows you to pick up 1 of your Pokemon, all cards attached into your hand. Can also be used as a retreating device. Play 1 copy of Escape Rope. Original list played 2. Each player switches to their head active with one of their bench, and then your opponent switches first. So this allows you to just choose, not really choose your opponent's Pokemon to hit, but if they have a Pokemon in play that you don't want to be hitting into, because this deck wants to be hitting into 2 and 3 prize Pokemon, and taking those big 1-hit KOs. They throw up some fodder like a 1 prize Pokemon. You don't want to be hitting that. Escape Rope around it and take a KO on something else. Also allows you to utilize useful abilities such as Regidrago's Dragon Horde. Put Regidrago into the active, use Dragon Horde, and then Escape Rope out of the active into your Xerneas. 4 copies of VS Seeker. Put a support card from your pile into your hand. By the way, this could just be run as a 3rd Float Stone if you think that's better. 4 copies of VS Seeker. Put a supporter card from your pile into your hand. You absolutely need all of these supporter cards, a lot of times multiple times per game, so playing 4 versus Seeker seems like a no-brainer. 2 copies of Float Stone gives all your Pokemon free retreat, allows you to pivot, especially important when we're playing Max Elixir that only attaches to a benched basic Pokemon, so keep that in mind. 4 copies of Sky Field, absolutely necessary to play 4 because this deck is based around it. So each player can have 8 Pokemon in his or her bench, allowing us to hit up to 280, 310 with Hawlucha. We have 4 copies of DCE, provides 2 colorless energy for that 2 colorless in the Rainbow Force, 7 Fairy to provide the Fairy in the Rainbow Force, and 2 provide for Max Elixir. I would not go any less than 7 because you don't want to start whiffing your elixirs, and 1 counter to pay both the Xerneas, Cobalion, Tsareena, and potentially maybe even a Crobat V attack. You could, I guess you could do Volcanic. No, you can't do Volcanic Heat. It's the X's. Same. So there's the list I was talking about. This isn't my list, as I said, but I did make some adaptations to it. If you do want to run some of those suggestions, such as Kricketune V, Jirachi, Dragonite EX in those places, you can definitely do so. Regidrago, I think, is probably the best Dragon consistency, though. I don't think there's any better ones for that. If you want to run Sudowoodo, maybe. I don't think Alolan Muck was good, though, so I think that's definitely worth cutting that. Yeah, give this list a try. Maybe you make some adaptations to your own liking. And thank you all so much for checking out this video. If you haven't yet, subscribe to Whimsicott TCG, and I'll see you in the next one.